It wasn't a royal scandal, a leaked email, or even a Netflix flop that turned the tide against Meghan Markle. It was a punchline. One throwaway joke on Saturday Night Live, just a smirk, a photo, and a line that landed like a sledgehammer. The studio roared, the internet lit up, and for the first time, Meghan wasn't the misunderstood duchess or the Hollywood comeback queen. She was the punchline. And when comedy crosses into cruelty, it usually means one thing. The audience has already moved on. The laughter from SNL was still echoing online when the internet did what it always does. It went digging. Forgotten corners of the web lit up like bonfires. Old, grainy photos, snapshots from yacht parties on the Mediterranean, champagne glasses in hand, designer bikinis, powerful men never far from the frame suddenly resurfaced everywhere. Images Meghan's PR team had spent years, and reportedly millions, trying to scrub out of existence. Alone, the photos weren't shocking. Celebrities have pasts, wild summers, moments they'd rather keep private. That's not unusual. What made these images devastating wasn't what they showed, but what they revealed about the narrative Meghan had been selling. For years, the story had been polished. The silenced royal, the feminist warrior, the self-made outsider. Yet here were reminders of a different origin story, one that clashed violently with the fairy tale. And the internet smelled blood. The same platforms that once defended her now turned into archives of contradiction. Side-by-side comparisons, memes, TikToks dissecting every angle. Not mocking the photos themselves, but mocking the effort to erase them. Because in the digital age, nothing screams inauthentic louder than a cover-up. The backlash wasn't about luxury yachts or champagne flutes. It was about the frantic attempt to rewrite a past the public was never supposed to see. In an industry built on image, perception is currency, and Meghan's balance was slipping fast. It didn't take a scandal to end her momentum. Just whispers, hesitation, and a collective decision that she was no longer worth the gamble. The first signs were subtle. Invitations that once arrived like clockwork suddenly went missing. A red carpet event she would have been front row at became a scheduling conflict. Publicists who once pitched her name to every brand partnership stopped picking up the phone. Nobody sent a memo saying, "Avoid Meghan." They didn't have to. Hollywood speaks its own language, and silence is the sharpest word in it. Even her allies, the ones who had vouched for her at the height of her fame, began to vanish. Ellen, who once hailed her as brave and misunderstood, hadn't uttered her name in over a year. The Clooneys, once paraded as close family friends, evaporated from the Sussex narrative. And Oprah, the woman who handed Meghan the single most powerful PR platform of her life, was radio silent. No quotes, no cameos, not even a birthday repost. That's how the industry works. You don't get fired, you get ghosted. One by one, the defenders who had built her fortress of credibility pulled back, and suddenly that fortress looked more like an empty stage. Because in Hollywood, it isn't about loyalty. It's about liability. And the second you become a bigger risk than a reward, you stop being a friend, a client, or a collaborator. You become something far worse, irrelevant. And for Meghan, irrelevance was starting to feel inevitable. If the internet was ruthless and Hollywood was cautious, Netflix was clinical. The streamer had been the Sussexes' biggest backer, betting a reported $100 million on the promise that Harry and Meghan could deliver blockbuster content. For a while, the gamble seemed safe. Their tell-all docuseries drew attention, sparked headlines, and flooded social media. But attention isn't the same as loyalty. Behind the scenes, the numbers told a less glamorous story. Meghan's documentary may have launched with hype, but viewership plummeted after the first week. Audiences clicked out of curiosity, sighed, and closed the tab. Harry's Polo series barely cracked 500,000 views, ranking somewhere in the thousands. A humiliating figure for a couple once marketed as cultural disruptors. Even Suits, the legal drama Meghan left years ago, was pulling stronger numbers in reruns on the same platform. The irony couldn't have been sharper. And here's the truth about Netflix. They're not sentimental. They don't play politics. They play math. When those resurfaced yacht photos detonated online, Netflix executives saw the same thing everyone else did. The end of the illusion. The Sussex brand wasn't growing, it was shrinking, and the numbers confirmed it. So the whispers started. Not a dramatic cancellation, not a public feud. Just a quiet suggestion in boardrooms. Let the deal expire. No renewal hype, no messy fallout. Just a fade to black. Creative differences, brand misalignment, industry code for this isn't profitable anymore. For Meghan, Netflix wasn't just another gig. It was the crown jewel of her post-royal empire, the deal that proved she could stand shoulder to shoulder with Hollywood's elite. Watching it slip through her fingers wasn't just a financial blow. It was confirmation that the industry was done pretending her brand could still deliver. And when Netflix moves on, the rest of Hollywood doesn't wait around. They follow. By the time Netflix began drifting away, Meghan had already tried on more identities than most celebrities do in a lifetime. First, she was the Hollywood actress who married into royalty. Then the feminist warrior, the voice of the silenced, the racial justice symbol, the misunderstood wife, the entrepreneur, the lifestyle guru, the would-be media mogul. Each persona carefully packaged, each rollout backed by glossy production and expensive PR. But here's the problem with masks. The more you change them, the easier it is for the audience to see the seams. Every reinvention contradicted the last. The feminist firebrand who demanded privacy became the duchess cashing in on tell-all interviews. The relatable lifestyle influencer was caught picking berries in a cashmere sweater, perfectly posed in a rented English garden. The champion of authenticity seemed more scripted with every appearance. Audiences didn't just grow skeptical. They grew tired. Because branding fatigue is real. You can only ask people to buy into your story so many times before they start to notice the cracks. And when those cracks appear, the internet doesn't speculate. It documents. Old interviews resurface. Staff testimonies circulate. Side-by-side comparisons spread like wildfire. Fans who once defended Meghan began compiling receipts, not out of malice, but out of disillusionment. What stung most wasn't the criticism. It was the realization that the public no longer believed her. Her content didn't flop because of racism or sexism, as her defenders insisted. It flopped because it felt hollow. Because audiences can sense when someone is performing rather than living. Because no amount of production value can disguise when the story you're selling doesn't match the reality behind it. Meghan wasn't being attacked. She was being exposed. By her own contradictions, her own overexposure, and her own insistence on controlling every detail of a narrative that no longer rang true. And in Hollywood, when the branding becomes bigger than the person, the collapse is only a matter of time. By the time the branding fatigue set in, Meghan was already scrambling for her next reinvention. A new cooking show, a fresh lifestyle brand, another podcast, another rollout of empowerment slogans and curated photo shoots. On paper, it was the same formula that had worked before: polished production, aspirational aesthetics, and a promise of relatability wrapped in luxury packaging. But this time, the audience wasn't buying it. The cooking show didn't flop because of camera angles or pacing. It flopped because it felt like a PR exercise, not a passion project. The lifestyle brand wasn't ridiculed because of its logo or design. It was ridiculed because it looked like a copy-and-paste version of what other influencers had already perfected. Every new launch felt less like creativity and more like desperation. Another attempt to spin the wheel and hope one version of Meghan would finally stick. And the internet noticed. A staged garden photo of Meghan picking berries in designer white pants went viral, not as inspiration, but as satire. Instead of feeling authentic, it became a meme, a shorthand for the gap between her branding and her reality. Critics tore into the curated aesthetic, influencers mocked the tone-deaf styling, and even her defenders found it harder to explain away the disconnect. Worse still, every misstep triggered a new wave of receipts. Staff exit interviews resurfaced. Old interviews were dissected. Side-by-side comparisons popped up on TikTok, showing just how many times her narrative had shifted over the years. What once looked like control now looked like manipulation. And in entertainment, perception moves faster than damage control. Invitations quietly disappeared. Collaborations stalled in development hell. Industry whispers solidified into unspoken rules. Don't book her, don't pitch her, don't associate with her. She wasn't being silenced. She was being sidelined. The meltdown wasn't on the horizon. It was already here. And the more she tried to reinvent herself, the more obvious the collapse became. Meghan Markle's fall wasn't a takedown. It wasn't the result of a tabloid conspiracy or some orchestrated smear campaign. It was something far simpler and far more brutal: overexposure. She didn't lose her audience because of one mistake. She lost them because she tried too hard to control the story until the story itself slipped out of her hands. The SNL joke didn't ruin her. It revealed her. It was the sound of the public admitting what they'd felt for years but hadn't said aloud. The fairy tale had run its course. From there, the dominoes didn't just fall, they collapsed. The resurfaced photos, the Hollywood silence, the Netflix retreat, the endless reinventions that felt more like branding exercises than real life. All of it added up to one undeniable truth. The audience no longer trusted her. And in entertainment, trust is everything. It's the invisible contract between a public figure and their fans, between a star and the industry that invests in them. When that contract breaks, the spotlight doesn't fade gently. It shuts off. Allies don't announce their departure. They ghost. Platforms don't renew deals. They let them expire. Brands don't issue statements. They just stop calling. Meghan's story is more than a personal downfall. It's a case study in what happens when branding overtakes authenticity, when every reinvention is so curated that the person behind it disappears. Because audiences today can sniff out what's real and what's rehearsed. And once they decide it's all performance, no amount of PR spin can bring them back. So the cautionary tale is this. In a world where fame moves at the speed of the internet, you can only sell the fairy tale for so long before people start asking to see the ending. And for Meghan Markle, that ending may already be here.